I am Alex Thompson. I'm 32 years old, and my own mother kicked me out of my family with a single text message, after I had spent years paying the mortgage on their house. Before I tell you about the panicked phone call I received from their lawyer just 48 hours later, do me a favor and let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. It's good to know you're out there. It all started on a Tuesday, a completely ordinary, forgettable Tuesday, until my phone buzzed with a notification that would detonate my entire world. I was in the middle of a quarterly budget meeting, staring at a spreadsheet, when the screen lit up. It was from my mom. My heart did a little jump the way it always did. Maybe she was checking in or sending a picture of the dog. I unlocked the phone. The words on the screen were stark, cold, and utterly brutal. Alex, your father, Leo, and I have decided we no longer trust you. We have changed all the locks on the front door, including the gate code. I read it once, then twice. My brain struggled to connect the words to the person who sent them. This was my mother, the woman who taught me to tie my shoes, the one I called every Sunday. The message was so devoid of emotion, so clinical, it felt like it had been written by a stranger, or a lawyer. There was no, "Hi Alex. No, I'm sorry." Just a blunt, devastating declaration. They no longer trust me. Changed the locks. It was an eviction notice from my own family. My fingers felt numb as I held the phone. The noise of the meeting around me faded into a dull roar. A colleague was saying something about Q4 projections, but I couldn't hear him. All I could hear was the slamming of a door in my face. A door I had paid for. For a moment, I felt nothing but a hollow, ringing silence in my chest. There was no anger, no sadness, just emptiness. The shock was a shield, protecting me from the tidal wave of pain I knew was coming. I stared at the blinking cursor in the reply box. What do you even say to that? Do you beg? Do you demand an explanation? Do you rage? No. Something inside me, something that had been worn down and exhausted for years, finally snapped. It wasn't loud. It was a quiet, definitive break. I typed one single word, a word that felt both like a surrender and a declaration of war. Understood. I hit send. Then, with a strange sense of calm, I opened my banking app. I navigated to the automatic payments section. There it was, scheduled for the first of every month. Mortgage payment, Eleanor Thompson. Amount, $4,800. I'd been paying it for nearly 5 years without fail. My finger hovered over the cancel payment button. I didn't hesitate. I pressed it. A confirmation screen popped up. Are you sure you want to cancel this recurring transfer? I pressed confirm. Done. 2 days later, on Thursday afternoon, my phone rang. It was an unknown number, a local area code. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, a new message popped up. It was from the same number. Mr. Thompson, this is Philip Grant, your family's attorney. We have an urgent issue. Please call me back immediately. My heart started to pound, but this time it wasn't from pain. It was from something else entirely. I leaned back in my chair and looked out the window. The panic in his message was a stark contrast to the cold dismissal in my mother's text. The game had just changed, and for the first time in a very long time, I felt like I was holding some of the cards. But before I explain what that lawyer was so panicked about, we need to go back. We need to go back 5 years, to the day I became my family's savior. Or so I thought. 5 years ago, I wasn't a creditor. I was a son. Proud one. I had just landed a major promotion at my engineering firm, and with it came a significant salary increase. I remember the day I got the news. I called my parents before I even told my best friend. Their joy was my joy. I thought we were a team. About a month later, I went over for our usual Sunday dinner. The mood was off. My dad, Richard, was quiet, staring into his mashed potatoes like they held the secrets to the universe. My mom, Eleanor, kept sighing. My younger brother, Leo, wasn't even there. What's wrong? I finally asked, putting my fork down. My mom's eyes welled up with tears. It's the house, Alex, she whispered. The bank. They sent another notice. My dad finally looked up, his face etched with a shame that made my stomach twist. The adjustable rate mortgage, it adjusted. The payments, son, we can't make them. We're 3 months behind. The air was sucked out of the room. This was the house I grew up in. The backyard where I learned to throw a baseball. The kitchen where my mom patched up my scraped knees. The thought of them losing it, of a foreclosure sign being hammered into the lawn, was unthinkable. How much is it? I asked, my voice steady. $4,800 a month, my dad mumbled. It's impossible. I did the math in my head. My new salary. My own expenses were modest. I lived in a small apartment and didn't have expensive hobbies. It would be tight, very tight. It would mean putting my own plans, saving for a down payment on my own place, investing more aggressively, on hold. Indefinitely. But then I looked at my mother's tear-streaked face, at my father's defeated posture. This was my family. What was money compared to that? I'll cover it, I said. Their heads snapped up. What? My mom breathed. I'll take care of the mortgage, I repeated, more firmly this time. I can set up an automatic transfer. You won't have to worry about it again. The relief that washed over them was palpable. My mom started sobbing, but this time they were tears of gratitude. She rushed around the table and hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. Oh, Alex, you're our savior, our guardian angel. My dad gripped my shoulder, his eyes shining. We'll pay you back, son. I swear it. This is just temporary. I waved it off. Don't worry about it. We're family. This is what we do for each other. In that moment, I felt 10 feet tall. I wasn't just Alex, the quiet engineer. I was Alex, the man who saved his family. The responsible one. The bedrock. I believed in that role. I cherished it. I thought it meant I had earned a permanent, respected place at the heart of my family. I had no idea that I wasn't securing my place. I was just signing a contract for a role they had already cast me in. The sponsor. And as I would soon find out, the mortgage was just the beginning. The mortgage payments started flowing from my account to theirs like clockwork. For the first few months, every phone call ended with my parents thanking me profusely. But slowly, the thanks became less frequent, replaced by an unspoken assumption. My contribution wasn't a gift anymore. It was an utility, as reliable and expected as the water running from the tap. And that tap was about to be turned on full blast because my younger brother, Leo, was a black hole of financial irresponsibility. Leo was, and always had been, the golden child. While I was the quiet, steady one, Leo was the charismatic dreamer. He was always chasing some brilliant, get-rich-quick scheme that was destined to change the world, and my parents were his biggest cheerleaders. The problem was, none of these schemes ever worked, and I was the one who ended up cleaning up the mess. About a year into paying the mortgage, I got a call from my mom. Her voice was frantic. Alex, you have to help. Leo is in trouble. What kind of trouble? I asked, a familiar sense of dread creeping in. His startup, the one for artisanal, gluten-free dog treats. It didn't work out. He has some investors. They're very unhappy. They're talking about lawyers, Alex. It turned out Leo had burned through $30,000 of other people's money with nothing to show for it but a fancy logo and a bunch of unsold dog biscuits. He was 28 years old. I was furious, but my mom's pleading wore me down. He's just trying to find his way, honey. He has so much potential. We can't let this ruin him. So I drained a significant portion of my personal savings, the money I had been carefully setting aside for my future, and paid off Leo's unhappy investors. Leo's apology was casual, almost an afterthought. Thanks, man. I owe you one. He never mentioned it again. But the demands didn't stop. A few months later, his car broke down. It wasn't a surprise. He drove an old, flashy sports coupe he couldn't afford. My parents called. Alex, Leo needs a reliable car to get to job interviews. It's an investment in his future. So I co-signed a loan for a sensible sedan, knowing full well whose credit would be on the line if he missed a payment. Which he did. Twice. Then he and his wife, Sophia, decided their apartment was too small. Again, my parents ran interference. They need a bigger place, Alex. For when they have kids. It's about building a future. I ended up loaning them the money for a security deposit and first month's rent on a place I knew was beyond their means. The word loan was used, but we all knew it was a gift. Each time, the script was the same. Leo had a need. My parents would call me, framing it as a crisis that only I could solve. They would praise my generosity and responsibility, while simultaneously making excuses for Leo's recklessness. "He's the creative one," my dad would say with a shrug. "You're the practical one. It's a good balance." I was funding a lifestyle my brother didn't earn, enabling a cycle of failure, all under the guise of family. I was so desperate for their approval, so invested in my role as the responsible son, that I didn't see what was happening. I wasn't the bedrock. I was the doormat, and everyone was wiping their feet on me. The financial drain was one thing, but the biggest sacrifice I made wasn't something you could see on a bank statement. It was a ghost, a shadow of a life I could have had. About 3 years into this arrangement, an opportunity landed on my desk that made my heart race. It was a dream job. My company was opening a new research and development hub in Germany. They wanted me to lead a small, elite team. It was a massive promotion, a huge step up in my career, with a salary that would have been life-altering. It meant travel, autonomy, and the chance to work on cutting-edge technology. It was everything I had ever worked for. I was ecstatic. I spent a week imagining my life in Munich. The efficiency, the culture, the challenge. I started looking up apartments, even practicing a few German phrases online. When I finally went to my parents' house to tell them the news, I was bursting with it. I found them in the living room. "Mom, Dad, I have incredible news." I started, barely able to contain my excitement. The company offered me a position in Germany. It's a director-level role. They want me to head up a new team. I expected them to be thrilled for me. I expected cheers, hugs, maybe even a celebratory dinner. Instead, a chilling silence fell over the room. My dad stared at the floor. My mom's face, which had been smiling a moment before, crumpled. "Germany?" she said, her voice barely a whisper. "But that's so far away." "I know, but it's an amazing opportunity." I pressed on, my excitement starting to falter. "It's a 2-year contract, maybe longer if it goes well." Tears began to stream down her face. "2 years? Alex, how could you? What about us? What about the house? What about Leo? He needs you here. We all need you." It was emotional blackmail, pure and simple. But at the time, it felt like a desperate plea. My father chimed in, his voice heavy with disappointment. "Your mother is right, son. Your place is here. Family has to come first." They weren't seeing me, Alex, their son, with a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. They saw a resource, a support system that was about to be unplugged. My success didn't matter as much as their stability. My dreams were secondary to their comfort. I spent the next week in agony. My boss called, wanting an answer. I could hear the excitement in his voice, the assumption that of course I would take it. Every instinct screamed at me to say yes, to pack my bags and go. But then I would picture my mother's crying face. I would hear my father's disappointed voice. The fear of being the son who abandoned his family was a powerful anchor. My core fear, being cast out, being seen as selfish, was being expertly used against me. In the end, I caved. I called my boss and turned down the promotion. I told him it was for personal family reasons. The disappointment in his voice was a knife in my gut. He was a good man, and I knew I had likely burned a bridge. That night, I called my parents to tell them my decision. The relief in my mom's voice was sickeningly sweet. "Oh, Alex, I knew you'd do the right thing. You are such a good son. We are so proud of you." Proud of me for what? For staying? For giving up my dream so Leo could continue to chase his, funded by my salary? As I hung up the phone and stared at my reflection in the dark window of my apartment, a single, bitter question echoed in my mind. What was all this sacrifice for? I had no idea. The answer was nothing. Absolutely nothing. For the next 2 years, I fell into a kind of numb routine. I went to work. I paid their mortgage. I paid for Leo's latest emergency. I showed up for family dinners and pretended everything was fine. I told myself I had made the right choice, that family was more important than a fancy title or a life in Europe. I was lying to myself, and deep down I knew it. The crack in my carefully constructed denial appeared, as so many things do these days on social media. I was scrolling through my phone one evening, half watching some boring show on TV, when a new post from my mom popped up in my feed. It was a picture of the family home. It was a beautiful shot, taken at sunset, the golden light making the old house look warm and inviting. My house, I thought with a pang of misplaced pride. But it was the caption that made my blood run cold. My mother had written, "So incredibly proud of our son Leo for building a future we can all share. After all his hard work, this home is finally in the right hands. Here's to the next generation." I stared at the words, my thumb frozen over the screen. Our son Leo. His hard work. Finally in the right hands. There were over 50 comments already. Aunts, uncles, family, friends, all congratulating Leo. "Way to go, Leo. Your parents must be so proud. A real family man." My name was nowhere. Not in the post, not in the comments. It was a complete erasure. For years of payments, of financial strain, of sacrificing my own future, all of it had been wiped clean from the official family history. In its place was a lie, a carefully crafted narrative where Leo, the perpetual failure, was recast as the hero, the provider. I felt a hot, prickling sensation behind my eyes. It was a unique kind of pain, the feeling of being made invisible. He wasn't just taking my money. He was taking my story. I immediately called my mom. She answered on the second ring, her voice cheerful. "Hi, sweetie. Did you see my post? Isn't it wonderful?" "I saw it, Mom," I said, my voice tight. "What is it talking about? Leo's hard work?" "I'm the one paying the mortgage." There was a brief pause. "Oh, Alex, don't be so sensitive," she said, her tone shifting from cheerful to dismissive. "It's just a post. You know how much Leo has struggled. He needed a win. We're just trying to build up his confidence." "Build up his confidence by lying?" I shot back, my voice rising. "You're telling everyone he owns the house that I am paying for." "It's not a lie, it's a goal," she stammered, clearly flustered. "One day this house will be his. You're just helping out until then. As for the family, Alex, why do you always have to make everything about you? Make it about me?" My jaw dropped. I was speechless. I had been paying their single largest bill for 4 years, and I was being accused of being selfish for simply wanting the truth to be acknowledged. I ended the call, my hand shaking. That conversation was a splash of icy water to the face. They didn't see me as a partner in this. They didn't even see me as a generous son. They saw me as a placeholder, a temporary wallet until the rightful heir could take his throne. The throne I was paying to keep polished for him. And I suddenly had a very, very bad feeling that this Facebook post wasn't just about building Leo's confidence. It was the first step in a much bigger plan. That Facebook post lit a fire under me. The unease, the feeling of being used that I had suppressed for years, now roared to life. My mother's flimsy excuses didn't sit right with me. This wasn't just a simple ego boost for Leo. Something else was going on. It was time for me to stop being the trusting son and start thinking like the engineer I was. Analyze the data. My first move was to do something I probably should have done years ago. I ran a check on the property title. Because my name wasn't on the deed, I couldn't see everything, but I could see if any new liens or applications had been filed. It took a few days to get the online records. When the report came back, my stomach plunged. There was a recent application for a home equity line of credit, a HELOC, for $75,000. The applicant's name, Leo Thompson. My heart hammered against my ribs. He wasn't just trying to take credit for the house. He was actively trying to borrow against it. Against the equity that I had been building with every single $4,800 payment. For what? A new car? Another failed business venture? A lavish vacation for him and Sophia? He was treating my financial sacrifice like his personal piggy bank. But how was that possible? He didn't own the house. My parents did. They would have had to sign off on it. The realization hit me like a physical blow. They were in on it. All of them. This was a coordinated effort. The Facebook post wasn't just a bit of family PR. It was laying the groundwork. They were building a public narrative that Leo was the responsible homeowner, likely to make the loan application look more plausible. The betrayal was so much deeper than I had imagined. This wasn't just taking my money for granted. This was calculated, premeditated theft. They were conspiring to leverage an asset I was maintaining to fund their golden child's lifestyle, putting the entire property at risk. If he defaulted on that loan, the bank could put a lien on the house. They could lose it all. After everything I had done to save it, they were gambling it away behind my back. I needed more proof. I thought about who would know the details. The family lawyer, Philip Grant, came to mind, but he would never talk to me. Then I remembered my cousin, Chloe. She worked as a paralegal at a downtown law firm. She was quiet and we weren't super close, but she was always fair. I took a long shot and called her. Chloe, hey, it's Alex. I have a weird question, and I need you to be discreet. I explained the situation, how I'd been paying the mortgage, and what I'd found in the property records. I asked her if there was any way to know if my parents were trying to add Leo to the deed, a process known as a quitclaim deed. She was quiet for a long moment. Alex, I shouldn't be telling you this, she said, her voice low. But I overheard my mom talking to your mom last week. They were talking about making the house situation official before Leo's birthday. Your mom mentioned something about getting the paperwork sorted with Philip Grant. There it was. The confirmation. They weren't just applying for a loan. They were trying to legally transfer ownership. They were actively trying to steal a $500,000 asset from right under my nose, all while smiling in my face at Sunday dinners. The scale of the deception was breathtaking. This was a full-blown family conspiracy, and I was the mark. The anger I felt was cold and sharp. The time for hurt feelings was over. It was time to gather evidence. Just when I thought the betrayal couldn't get any more blatant, my family found a way to twist the knife even deeper. A few days after my discovery, I noticed I had been removed from our long-standing family group chat, the one we used for everything from birthday wishes to coordinating holiday meals. An hour later, I got a new notification. I had been added to a new group. The name of the group was Family Circle. Felt exclusive, ominous. The first message was from my mother. Just tidying things up. A smaller group for closer family matters. The message was clearly for my benefit, a passive-aggressive way of letting me know I was on the outside looking in. Then the mockery started. My Aunt Karen, my mom's sister, posted a meme. It was one of those popular ones with the distracted boyfriend. The boyfriend was labeled Mom and Dad. The jealous girlfriend was labeled Leo. And the woman walking by, the one catching the boyfriend's eye, was labeled the son who actually pays for everything. I stared at it, my stomach churning. It was so specific, so targeted. Underneath, my brother Leo commented with a string of laughing emojis. Then my father, my own father, replied to Leo's comment, "Hey now, be nice to the ATM." The ATM. That's what they called me. I felt like I couldn't breathe. This wasn't happening in secret anymore. They were openly mocking me, turning my sacrifice into a running joke. It was a public shaming, performed for an audience of my extended family. They were isolating me, painting me as the transactional outsider, the fool who paid the bills. Then came the final, brutal blow. Ben, my best friend since kindergarten, the man who was supposed to be the best man at my wedding if I ever had one, liked my father's comment. He didn't write anything, just a simple thumbs up. That little blue icon felt like a punch to the gut. Ben knew my whole situation. I had confided in him for years about the financial pressure, about the sacrifices, and he sided with them. He chose to laugh along with my tormentors. Why? The answer came a few days later when I saw a picture Ben posted. He was at a barbecue at my parents' house. In the background, Leo was showing off a brand new, top-of-the-line grill. Ben's caption read, "Big things coming for my new business partner, Leo. Thanks for the warm welcome into the family." Business partner. It all clicked into place. They had bought his loyalty. They had probably promised him a piece of that hellic money, an investment into whatever business he and Leo were cooking up. They had turned my best friend against me. The feeling of total, absolute isolation was crushing. I had no one. My parents, my brother, my father, my aunt, and now my best friend. They were all part of this family circle. This little club where I was the punchline. I muted the chat. I couldn't bring myself to leave it. I needed to see what they were saying. It was a form of self-torture, but I needed to know the full extent of their cruelty. I scrolled through the messages, the memes, the laughing emojis. Each one was a small paper cut, and I was bleeding out. They weren't just stealing my money and my future. They were trying to steal my dignity, and I was dangerously close to letting them. The week leading up to my mother's 60th birthday party was one of the longest of my life. I was living in a fog of anger and hurt. The invitation, a gaudy thing with gold lettering, sat on my counter like a threat. "Come celebrate Eleanor Thompson," it said. I wanted to set it on fire. Every instinct told me to cut them off, to disappear. But I knew I couldn't. Not yet. I had to see this through to the end. I had to understand how deep the rot went. The day before the party, I had to stop by the house to pick up some old winter clothes I had stored in the attic. I timed my visit for midday on a Friday, assuming no one would be home. I used the old key I still had, the one for the back door they had apparently forgotten to change. The house was quiet. I moved quickly, heading for the attic stairs. As I passed my parents' bedroom, I heard voices from inside. It was my mom and Leo. They must have come home early. I froze, pressing myself against the wall in the hallway. "Is everything set with the bank?" Leo was asking, his voice brimming with a smug confidence that made my skin crawl. "Philip Grant said the final papers should be ready to sign next week," my mother replied. "Once my birthday is over, we'll get it all finalized. It's the perfect gift." Then Leo laughed. It was a sound I'll never forget. A low, condescending chuckle. "Did you see Alex's face when I told Aunt Karen about my plans for the backyard renovation? He looked like a lost puppy. He didn't even blink. He just sits there and takes it." My mother's voice joined his laughter. "He's always been like that. So eager to please. It's almost done, sweetheart. Once the paperwork's through and your name is on the deed, he won't be able to say a thing. The house will be secure." I felt my blood turn to ice. They were openly discussing their plot, laughing about my cluelessness. I was a joke to them, a means to an end. But it was Leo's next sentence that shattered the last remaining fragment of my heart. "He's not family anymore, Mom. Let's be real. He's just a sponsor. A sponsor. Not a son. Not a brother. A transaction. An anonymous benefactor with no rights, no feelings, and no say." In that moment, standing in the dim hallway of the house I had saved, everything shifted. The pain, the hurt, the confusion. It all burned away, leaving behind something cold, hard, and incredibly clear. There was no family to save. There was no love to win back. There was only a debt to be collected. I didn't go up to the attic. I turned around, walked silently out the back door, and locked it behind me. As I drove away, I didn't feel sadness. I didn't feel anger. I felt a profound and terrifying calm. The son they knew was gone. He had died in that hallway. The man who was going to that birthday party tomorrow wasn't their son or their brother. He was their debt collector, and he was coming to deliver the bill. The invitation on my counter no longer looked like a threat. It looked like an opportunity, an arena, and I was going to walk in fully armed. The rest of that day was a blur of focused activity. The shock had given way to a steely resolve. I spent the next 8 hours preparing for my mother's 60th birthday party with the same meticulous precision I would use to plan a multi-million-dollar engineering project. My first call was to the one person I thought might still be in my corner. My grandfather, Arthur Thompson. My dad's father. He was an old-school guy, a retired Marine colonel who valued honor and integrity above all else. He and I had always been close. He lived in a retirement community a few hours away and wasn't involved in the daily family drama. I didn't know if he would believe me, but I had to try. I called him. "Grandpa," I said, my voice steady. "It's Alex. I need to tell you something. And I need you to just listen." I laid it all out. The mortgage, the lies, the Helic application, the plan to change the deed, the overheard conversation. I didn't embellish. I just stated the facts. When I was finished, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. Finally, he spoke, and his voice was like gravel. "The little weasels," he said. It was the calmest, most dangerous tone I had ever heard from him. "I've had my suspicions for years, son. They've always been soft, entitled. I'm sorry it came to this. What's your plan?" I told him I was going to the party to confront them. "Good," he said. "You should not let this stand. But you don't go into a fight without ammunition. Send me everything you have. Bank statements, screenshots, everything. I'm also attending the party tomorrow," he added before I could respond. "I think it's time I reminded your father who put the original down payment on that house 30 years ago." I hung up the phone with a renewed sense of purpose. I wasn't alone. For the rest of the night, I was a machine. I logged into my online banking and downloaded 5 years' worth of statements, highlighting every single $4,800 mortgage payment. I printed out receipts for Leo's car repairs, his rent deposits, the debt I paid for his failed business. I took screenshots of the family chat, the cruel memes, my father's ATM comment. I compiled it all into a single damning folder. Then I did the final calculation. I added up every cent. The mortgage, the bailouts, the loans. The final number was staggering. $311,115.84. I typed that number in a huge, bold font on the final page of a PowerPoint presentation I created. The presentation was simple. Slide after slide of evidence. A digital paper trail of their greed and my sacrifice. As the sun rose on the morning of my mother's birthday, I looked at the folder and the USB drive on my desk. This wasn't just about the money. It was about the truth. They had written their narrative. Now it was time for me to present mine. The party was held at a fancy Italian restaurant my parents couldn't afford, a place with white tablecloths and waiters in crisp black vests. I knew with a sickening certainty that I had probably paid for it indirectly. I arrived exactly 15 minutes late, a tactic I learned from my grandfather. "Never be on time," he used to say. "Make an entrance or don't bother showing up." I slipped in quietly and took a seat at an empty table in the back, near the large projection screen they had set up for a slideshow of old family photos. I wanted to observe. The room was filled with about 50 people. Family, friends, all smiling and laughing, completely oblivious. I saw my mother, Eleanor, glowing in a new dress, accepting compliments and gifts. I saw my father, Richard, playing the part of the proud husband, and Leo swaggering around the room like he was the man of the hour. I saw my former best friend, Ben, clapping Leo on the back. They were all there, the whole cast of my betrayal, enjoying a celebration funded by their sponsor. I nursed a glass of water, my heart beating a steady, rhythmic drum against my ribs. I wasn't nervous. I was waiting. After about an hour, my father tapped a glass for attention. The room fell silent. He made a short, rambling speech about how wonderful my mother was. Then he introduced her for the main event. Eleanor stood up, beaming. She thanked everyone for coming. And then she began the speech I knew was coming. "I am so blessed," she began, dabbing a theatrical tear from her eye, "to have such a wonderful family. And as I enter this new decade, I feel so secure, so hopeful for the future. And a large part of that is thanks to my wonderful son, Leo." She gestured to my brother, who puffed out his chest. The room murmured in approval. "He has worked so hard," she continued, her voice thick with emotion, "to become the man he is today. He has made it his mission to provide for us, to ensure that his father and I will always have a roof over our heads." Seeing this beautiful family home, the home where we raised our children, finally in his capable hands, it's the greatest 60th birthday gift a mother could ask for. The room erupted in applause. People were looking at Leo with admiration. He was soaking it in, a picture of filial devotion. My moment had arrived. As the applause died down, I stood up from my table in the back. I walked slowly, deliberately, towards the front of the room, towards the podium where my mother was standing. A few people turned to look, a ripple of confusion spreading through the crowd. My mother's smile faltered as she saw me approaching, my face a blank mask. I reached the podium and turned to face the room. I picked up the spare microphone. "That was a beautiful speech, Mom," I said, my voice amplified, cutting through the silence. It was truly inspiring. It made me realize I've been a little remiss in my own duties. I forgot to send you my own birthday gift. An invoice. A collective gasp went through the room. My mother's face went pale. Leo took a step forward, his expression turning from smug to furious. "What do you think you're doing, Alex?" he hissed. I ignored him. I pulled the USB drive from my pocket and plugged it into the laptop connected to the projector. The slideshow of happy family photos vanished. It was replaced by the first slide of my presentation. It was a simple bank statement with a single line item highlighted in yellow. "Let's start with the first payment," I said, my voice calm and clear. "August 2019, $4,800. The first of 60 payments I have made to keep that very roof over your heads." The show had begun. The room was dead silent. The only sound was the quiet hum of the projector. My mother stood frozen, her face a mask of disbelief and horror. My father looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. I clicked to the next slide. It was a canceled check. "This," I said, pointing my remote at the screen, "is the $30,000 payment I made to save Leo from a lawsuit after his artisanal dog treat business went under." A wave of murmurs swept through the audience. People were shifting in their seats, looking from the screen to Leo, whose face was now a blotchy red. Click. The next slide. "Here are the receipts for the co-signed car loan after Leo's sports car was repossessed. You'll note my credit score took the hit for the 2 payments he forgot to make." Click. "And the security deposit and first month's rent for his luxury apartment that he couldn't afford." Click, click, click. I went through it all. Every bailout, every loan, every financial rescue. With each slide, I laid another brick in the wall of their lies, and with each brick, the truth became clearer to everyone in that room. Then I brought up the screenshots of the family circle chat, the memes, the jokes. My father's ATM comment appeared on screen, 10 feet high. I could hear people gasping. My Aunt Karen looked like she had seen a ghost. My father sank into his chair, covering his face with his hands. Finally, I got to the last slide. It was just white text on a black background. Total amount owed, $311,115.84. "So, Mom," I said, turning to look directly at her, "while I appreciate the sentiment of your speech, the facts are a little different. Leo hasn't been providing for you. I have been your sponsor, your ATM, your forgotten son who sacrificed his own future, including a major career promotion overseas, to keep you comfortable. You have no right," my mother finally shrieked, finding her voice. "This is a family matter." "It stopped being a family matter," I said, my voice dropping, becoming dangerously quiet. "The moment you conspired to steal my investment, the moment you tried to add Leo to the deed of a house you don't even pay for, it stopped being a family matter when you called me a sponsor." Just as Leo started to lunge towards me, a loud, authoritative voice boomed from the back of the room. "Enough!" The crowd parted, and walking slowly towards the front, his face like thunder, was my grandfather, Arthur Thompson. Beside him was a man in a sharp suit, carrying a briefcase. Mr. Davison, his lawyer. My grandfather didn't even look at me. His eyes were locked on my parents and Leo. "I have listened to this disgusting display with shame," he said, his voice resonating with command. "Shame that my own son would participate in such a dishonorable, cowardly scheme." He stopped directly in front of my father. "Richard, you are a disappointment. And Eleanor, your greed has poisoned this family." Then he turned to the room. "Let me make something perfectly clear to everyone. 30 years ago, I gave my son the down payment for that house. It was a gift, predicated on the values of hard work and family. Values that have clearly been forgotten. He looked at his lawyer, Mr. Davison, who opened his briefcase. As of last week, my grandfather announced, his voice ringing with finality, I have instructed my lawyer to restructure my entire estate. My son, Richard, his wife, Eleanor, and their son, Leo, have been completely removed from my will and all associated family trusts. Their inheritance is gone. The room gasped. My mother let out a small, strangled cry. Everything, my grandfather said, his eyes now finding mine, will be managed and eventually passed down to the only person in this family who has demonstrated any sense of loyalty, responsibility, and honor. My grandson, Alex. He looked back at my parents. You wanted the house in the right hands? Well, now the entire family legacy is. You are on your own. He had known. He had planned this. This was the ultimate checkmate. I stood there, microphone in hand, watching the complete and utter devastation dawn on the faces of my family. They hadn't just lost an argument. They had lost everything. Their future, their security, their inheritance. I looked at my mother, my father, and my brother, their faces pale with shock. And for the first time, I felt nothing but pity. I let the microphone drop to my side. My work here was done. This was the moment that changed everything, the moment I finally took back control of my life. Thank you for sticking with me this far, you're awesome. If you could, please help me out by liking this video and commenting the number 1 down below, just so I know you made it here with me. It doesn't just help more people find this story. It lets me know that my experiences mean something to someone out there. Your support is the biggest motivation for me to continue sharing the rest of this journey. Leaving the restaurant was surreal. I walked out into the cool night air, leaving the wreckage of my family's lives behind me. I didn't look back. My grandfather and his lawyer followed a moment later. My grandfather simply put a heavy hand on my shoulder, gave me a firm nod and said, I'll call you tomorrow, son. You did good. Then they were gone. By the time I got to my car, my phone had started to explode. It was a relentless barrage of notifications, a digital firestorm of their rage. The first text was from my mother. You have destroyed this family. I hope you're happy. I never want to see you again. The next was from Leo. You're dead to me. You'll pay for this. A threat from a man who had never paid for anything in his life. Then came my father. After all we did for you, this is how you repay us? Your grandfather is a cruel old man, and you are just like him. There were dozens more. Messages from my Aunt Karen, calling me a monster. Messages from cousins, telling me I had gone too far. It was a coordinated assault, an attempt to paint me as the villain, to guilt me into reversing course. But something inside me had fundamentally changed. Their words, which once would have crippled me with guilt and fear, now felt like nothing. They were just noise. The desperate screams of people who had been caught and were now facing the consequences. I drove home, and the phone buzzed and chimed the entire way. When I got to my apartment, I saw I had 57 new text messages and 23 missed calls. I sat on my couch in the dark, and with a strange sense of detachment, I went through them one by one. I didn't delete them. I read each hateful word. I needed to see the full scope of their delusion. Not once did any of them say, I'm sorry. Not once did they acknowledge the truth. It was all my fault. I was the one who was cruel, selfish, and destructive. After I had read the last message, I did something very simple. I opened my contacts list. I found Mom and blocked the number. I did the same for Dad, Leo, and every other family member who had sent a venomous text. The phone fell silent. The next morning, the official attack began. A call from Philip Grant, their lawyer. Alex, he said, his voice strained and overly professional. Your parents are, understandably, very distressed. They believe there has been a great misunderstanding. They are willing to discuss a reconciliation. There's nothing to discuss, I said calmly. Alex, be reasonable, he pleaded. A family torn apart by money. It's a tragedy. Surely we can come to some kind of financial arrangement that makes everyone happy. An arrangement? I asked, a humorless laugh escaping my lips. Okay, Philip, I'm open to an arrangement. Here are my terms. There was a palpable sense of relief in Philip Grant's voice. He thought he had an opening, a negotiation. He thought he was dealing with the old Alex, the one who would bend and break to keep the peace. He was wrong. "Excellent, Alex. Excellent," he said quickly. "What are you proposing?" "It's very simple," I stated, my voice devoid of emotion. "You have 72 hours to wire the full amount of $311,115.84 to my account. Not a cent less." A stunned silence came from the other end of the line. 300 and... "Alex, that's an impossible number. They don't have that kind of money." "That's not my problem," I replied. They were about to get a $75,000 line of credit on the house. That's a start. They can sell their cars. They can liquidate their assets. My grandfather has already cut them off from the family trust, so their future income is limited. I imagine that will motivate them. How they get the money is their problem. My problem is the number. "This is extortion," he sputtered. "No, Philip," I corrected him. "This is reimbursement. Extortion is what they were doing to me for the last 5 years. Consider this a retroactive service fee." He was stammering now, trying to find a legal foothold. "There was no contract, no written agreement for repayment." "You're right," I cut him off. "There wasn't. But what I do have is a mountain of evidence of a conspiracy to commit fraud. I have recorded conversations. I have text messages admitting their intent. I have proof of their plan to add Leo to the deed and leverage the property without my consent. If that money is not in my account in 72 hours, I will not file a civil suit. I will walk into the district attorney's office with my lawyer, Mr. Davison, by the way, my grandfather's lawyer, and file a criminal complaint. Furthermore, I will release the entire evidence package online. The audio recordings, the family chat, everything. I let that hang in the air for a moment. I knew my parents, and especially my mother, were obsessed with appearances, with what the neighbors and friends thought. The public humiliation would be worse for them than any financial penalty. Your clients have a choice, I concluded. They can face private financial difficulty, or they can face public humiliation and potential jail time. The clock starts now. I hung up the phone before he could reply. For the next 72 hours, I lived in a state of suspended animation. I didn't hear a word. The silence was unnerving. I started to wonder if I had overplayed my hand, if they had called my bluff. Then, on the third day, with just a few hours to spare, I received a notification from my bank. Incoming wire transfer, $311,115.84. They had done it. They had scraped it together. I stared at the number on my screen. It wasn't a victory. It didn't bring me joy. It was just closure. The period at the end of a very long, very painful sentence. The debt was paid. I was finally, truly free. 6 months later, the world looked different, quieter. The money sat in a high-yield savings account, untouched. I knew I should invest it, maybe use it for a down payment on a place of my own. But for now, I just needed to see it there. It was a tangible reminder of my freedom, a buffer between me and the world. The most significant change, however, wasn't financial. It was geographical. 2 weeks after the money arrived, I called my old boss. I asked him if there were any other opportunities for advancement, maybe even something similar to that position in Germany I had turned down years ago. I think he knew something had changed in my life because he didn't press for details. He just said, "Let me make a few calls." A month later, I was packing up my apartment. I wasn't moving to Germany, but I was moving to Seattle for a project lead position. It was a new city, a new job, a new life. It was a clean slate. The first few months in Seattle were strange. I was surrounded by the noise of a bustling city, but my life was filled with a profound silence. There were no frantic phone calls asking for money, no passive-aggressive family chats, no holidays filled with unspoken tension. The silence was jarring at first. I had grown so accustomed to the constant drama that peace felt unnatural. I spent my weekends exploring. I hiked in the mountains surrounding the city, breathing in the clean, crisp air. I found a small coffee shop near my new apartment where the barista knew my order. I bought a bike and rode along the waterfront. Slowly, painstakingly, I started building a life that was entirely my own, a life that wasn't defined by the needs and expectations of others. My work was challenging and fulfilling. I was leading a talented team, and my contributions were valued and, more importantly, acknowledged. I received a promotion within the first 6 months. My new salary was more than I had ever made, but it was the recognition that mattered more. It was proof that my worth wasn't tied to how much I could give to others, but to what I could build for myself. I spoke to my grandfather every Sunday. We talked about his week, my new job, the weather. We never spoke about my parents or Leo. There was an unspoken agreement that that chapter was closed. He was my only remaining link to my past, a link I cherished. I was healing. I hadn't realized how heavy the burden I was carrying was until it was gone. I was sleeping better. I was smiling more. I was starting to feel like myself again, or perhaps, for the first time. I was no longer Alex the sponsor, Alex the ATM, Alex the responsible son. I was just Alex, and it was more than enough. One rainy Seattle afternoon, about a year after I had moved, I received a package in the mail. It was a small, padded envelope with no return address, just a postmark from my old hometown. My first instinct was that it was from my parents, and my guard went up immediately. I almost threw it away, but curiosity got the better of me. Inside, there was no bombastic letter, no legal document, just a single handwritten card. I recognized the neat, careful handwriting immediately. It was from my cousin, Chloe, the paralegal. My hands trembled slightly as I opened it. "Dear Alex," it began. "I know it's been a long time, and I don't know if you'll even read this, but I have to write it anyway. I want to say I'm sorry. I was there at the party. I saw everything, and I was a coward. I heard them talking for months, and I never said a word to you. I was afraid of your mother, of being cast out myself. That's no excuse, but it's the truth. I'm sorry." I had to pause and take a deep breath. Her apology was a small, unexpected balm on a wound I didn't even know was still open. I continued reading. "Things here are not good. I'm not writing this to make you feel bad. I just thought you deserved to know the truth of the aftermath. After you left, everything fell apart. Leo and Sophia went through a nasty divorce. Apparently, she didn't stick around when the money dried up. She fought for full custody of the kids, citing his financial instability. The last I heard, he was living in a cheap apartment across town, working some dead-end sales job. Your parents had to sell the house. They couldn't afford the property taxes, let alone the upkeep, without your help and without Grandpa's support. They bought a small condo in a much cheaper town. It was a huge blow to their pride. The letter detailed the collapse of the world they had built on my back. It wasn't satisfying to read. It was just sad, a pathetic end to a story of greed. But it was the last paragraph that gave me the final piece of the puzzle I never knew I was missing. "I overheard my mom and your mom talking a few weeks ago. Your mom was crying. She said something that I can't get out of my head. She said she hated your success. She said that every time you got a promotion or did well, it reminded her of all the dreams she gave up when she was young to raise a family. She wanted to be an architect. Did you know that? She said seeing you build your life made her feel like a failure. And with Leo, she felt like she had a second chance to build someone up, to make him the success she never was. It's all twisted and wrong, I know. It doesn't excuse anything. But I thought you should know it was never really about you. It was always about her." I put the letter down, my mind reeling. It was the final, shocking twist. My mother's cruelty hadn't been born of malice. Not entirely. It had been born of envy. A deep, corrosive jealousy of the life I was building. A life that reminded her of her own failures. I wasn't just a sponsor. I was a mirror, and she hated the reflection she saw. It didn't make me forgive her, but it made me understand. And in that understanding, I found a final, profound sense of release. Her actions were never about my worth. They were about her lack of it. And that had absolutely nothing to do with me. I still have Chloe's letter. I keep it in a box with a few other important documents. I don't read it often, but I like knowing it's there. It's a reminder. Not a reminder of the pain, but a reminder of the truth. It's been 2 years now since that fateful birthday party. I live a quiet life here in Seattle. My work is good. I have friends, real friends, who value me for who I am, not for what I can provide. I'm even thinking about using that money to finally buy a small place of my own. A place with a view of the water. Place that is truly mine. I never heard from my parents or my brother again. After the wire transfer, they vanished from my life as completely as if they had never existed. I don't know exactly where they live or what they're doing. And the strange thing is, I don't care. I don't waste my time wondering if they're sorry, if they ever regret what they did. Their emotional landscape is no longer my territory to explore. I sometimes think about the word Leo used. Sponsor. He meant it as an insult, a way to dehumanize me, to reduce me to a function. But in a strange way, he was right. I was sponsoring a life that wasn't mine. I was funding a dream I had no part in. I was paying for a definition of family that had no room for me in it. The day I cut them off wasn't an act of vengeance. I see that now. It was an act of liberation. I wasn't destroying a family. I was escaping a toxic contract. I was resigning from a role I had never auditioned for. I am not broken. I am not bitter. I am not waiting for an apology that will never come. I'm just finished. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it resonated with you in some way. Have you ever faced a situation where you had to choose between your family and your own well-being? I'd be interested to hear about it. Feel free to share your story in the comments below, and please don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss what I have to share next. It means the world to me.